Welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Betty Chen. The 2024 Taiwanese presidential election is nearing its climax, with U.S.-China-Taiwan relations once again in a global spotlight, influenced by both the Taiwanese and the U.S. presidential elections. What geopolitical risks confront Taiwan, and what uncertainties do these pose? From the conclusion of the election on January 13th to the inauguration on May 20th, are cross-strait relations poised to undergo a significant testing phase? No matter which of the candidate wins, how might U.S.-China-Taiwan relations evolve, and what are Beijing's main concerns? Joining us today are Chenlung Kuo, United Daily News Deputy Editor-in-Chief, and William Stanton, former American Institute in Taiwan Director and National Zhengzhi University Chair Professor. A warm welcome to both of you on the show. As Taiwan's presidential election enters its final phase, cross-strait relations appear increasingly tense. This escalation can be attributed not only to Xi Jinping's public declaration about the inevitable unification of the motherland, but also to the Taiwanese military's response regarding the Chinese balloons passing the Strait Median Line in the lead-up to the elections. So let's start with today's conversation. Could you please first tell us a bit more about the challenges related to cross-strait relations that each of the three candidates will encounter if elected? Maybe Bill?
Well, if it's Lai Ching-te, he's already indicated that the line that has been pursued by Tsai Ing-wen will continue. So I think there are likely to be fewer surprises from Mr. Lai, or Vice President Lai. The fact is, though, that if Hou Yu-ih is elected, I think we could see substantial changes that are worrisome. We've already seen that he adopts often the line of Ma Ying-jeou, and Ma Ying-jeou, notably for Deutsche Welle, made a comment the other day that, in effect, if China wanted to take over, there was little or nothing that Taiwan could do about it. And basically, said we would just have to, here in Taiwan, would have to capitulate. That was very worrisome to me. In the case of Ko Wen-je, whom I got to know a little bit after I stepped down at AIT, I was on his international advisory board. And what was most upsetting to me about him was that he was so unpredictable. Mm-hmm. And all of his comments about Taiwan, about the cross-strait relationship, have gone in very many different directions. So I don't see any clear line that he's given on what will happen, although both he and Hou Yu-ih have indicated that they would take steps that are very reminiscent of Ma Ying-jeou. In the case of Ko Wen-je, he's talked about the need to allow Chinese students from the mainland to come here and both work and study, as if, we don't understand there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of young men and women in China who don't have jobs right now, and whose jobs would they be taking if they came here? On the other hand, also, Hou Yu-ih has also talked about reinvigorating the old idea that Ma Ying-jeou had promoted of having not only a trade economic framework, but also we should be open to a trade services agreement, which would have also opened up Taiwan to potentially thousands of business people opening up small businesses here in Taiwan, competition that I don't think the Taiwanese people would welcome. So I'm troubled by these two candidacies in particular.
So Bill shared with us his views. What about you, Chenlung?
I think that for Lai Ching-te, if he wins, then pretty much he will follow what Tsai Ing-wen president had been proclaimed. But the main concern is that whether he will have a secret agenda inside him. And that is the danger, I think, both the United States and China is worried about.
And the secret agenda being?
Secret agenda meaning that he will approach Taiwan independence more aggressively than President Tsai and less prudent than she was. As for Hou You-yi, as Bill had mentioned, I think the remark by former President Ma is a bad sign for Hou You-yi, but he quickly keep a distance from him, saying that I don't agree with him, right. Not only once but twice. As for Ko-wen-je, I think China would treat him, I think, pretty much the same way when Hou You-yi get elected, because when Ko-wen-je was mayor of Taipei, he had this kind of Taipei-Shanghai Forum annually. So that was considered the one that is promoting a cross-strait exchange. But there's something I want to mention also, is that maybe Hou You-yi and Ko-wen-je want to give out something like claiming 92 consensus in order to get some economic benefit back. But they will be facing a lot of pressure from China. The pressure is mainly moving toward agenda for unification. And they will have to find a way to resist that kind of pressure and keep them from getting into a negotiation table.
In any case, cross-strait relations has been one of the most important topics in Taiwan's presidential election, and there have been a lot of discussions about Chinese interference in this election. So in the press conference, Lai Ching-te said that the Chinese interference in Taiwan's election has been the most serious so far. And Hou You-yi in the press conference, he also said that, well, everything DPP, if they are not doing well, they will say it's Chinese interference. So what's your take on this in terms of Chinese interference in Taiwan's election?
Well, I think there's been clear evidence of Chinese interference. It's been documented, I think, in the news. But also, it's just, we've seen now for how many months, the gray zone war that China continues to pursue against Taiwan. This has been going on now for a few years. We also see recently, I was in my apartment the other day, and suddenly my phone went off with alerts saying that it turned out to be a mistake, but saying there was a missile flying over. And I could well believe it, because during the Nancy Pelosi visit, missiles flew over Taiwan. So it seemed to me, well, again, China would be quite ready to use that kind of threat to intimidate Taiwan voters. So I'm very concerned always that China has the wherewithal, the force, and the will to try to turn the election. And so it's something that Taiwanese people have to be concerned about.
Chenlung.
I think the interference of election is the thing that for Taiwan voters have to live with for the past 20 years. I mean, they have been trying to do that over and over again. About 20 years ago, there's Chinese Premier Zhu Rongji tried to intimidate Taiwan voters from vote for DPP. But this year, I think the Taiwan voters have been mature enough to resist that kind of intimidation. But on the other hand, I find that the ruling party and the government have tried to use this kind of China's intervention of elections and do a counter recognition war on Taiwan press. It means that they are leaking out the news that one of the popular band is going to say something about unification just before the election. And also the satellite launch was mistook as a missile launch. Those are the things I think now everyone have to be aware that the information you are reading or watching would have to take a grain of salt before you can really to know it's a true fact or not.
So skip that. People in Taiwan here, we already have this kind of filter to try to tell whether this is true or not, hopefully. So the 2024 presidential election in Taiwan and the U.S. are pivotal in shaping the U.S.-China-Taiwan relations. And also, on January 13th, the victory speech of the president-elect will be critically important because that will set the tone in terms of the future interactions between the new government and Beijing. So how do you assess the critical period on the day of January 13th, the day of the election, until the inauguration on May 20th?
Well, it's clearly going to be an important period, and I assume that whoever's elected is going to be very careful in the words they speak, because there'll be no desire to aggravate the cross-strait relationship. But you know, there's going well beyond that. I'm also extremely worried about the election in the United States. I've been on a few election panels, and it strikes me that whoever gets elected also has huge consequences for Taiwan. It strikes me that increasingly Donald Trump is an unreliable interlocutor on questions of Taiwan. I mean, he began his administration when he was elected president being very anti-China in terms of particularly of trade, and being more pro-Taiwan. But over time, that subsided. And as we just noted that he recently, for example, has said that the U.S. Secrets and knowledge of semiconductors were stolen by Taiwan, which is just nuts. And so he's quite unpredictable. He's very, he'll do anything, almost anything, to stay out of jail and get reelected, in my view. So I think both the Taiwanese people have to be aware, both careful about what's being said here in Taiwan, but also has to be worried about elections that won't occur until next November. But I think both have consequences for our overall relationship.
I think Bill is right. I would characterize the post-election period as the first one is from January 13 till May 20th, when the new president gets in office. But the second period would be from the May 20th until the November U.S. presidential elections. I think for a new president, they will be very careful about what's happening during the election campaign for America. I think also Beijing is watching this very carefully. What they really care is what would be the new policy of American president instead of the Taiwan new president. And as for the first period, I think for the new president, especially if William Lai get elected, I think it would not be a bad thing if he throw out some of the positive things that Beijing will hope to see. For instance, he said he's going to follow President Tsai's China policy. For instance, it would be dealing with the cross relations according to the constitutions of the ROC or something like that. That would be a positive sign. At least that is not being objected by China 8 years ago. I think that is the good beginning, and with that momentum, maybe they can have a positive exchange going on between Taipei and Beijing. But the most important thing is you have to be watch out for what's going to happen across the Pacific in the American elections.
We'll talk more about the U.S. election later, but now let's go back to the Taiwan's presidential election. According to the Financial Times, it says that right after January 13th, President Biden is going to send a high-ranking bipartisan delegation to Taiwan. What message does this send? Maybe we start with Chenlung.
I think, first of all, it's going to be, it's not something we've seen before. It used to be the AIT chairman of the directors coming to Taiwan after the elections. But this time, it's a higher level of delegations. And the second thing is a bipartisan delegations, headed by one is the Deputy Secretary of State, the other would be former national security advisors. And this had proven that the U.S. had a high regard of what's happening in Taiwan, but I think this also have to do with China's Central Liaison Department head Liu Jiancao, who is currently in the United States, and he had just had a talk with the Deputy National Security Advisors. They talk about the Taiwan issue as well as other issues, but I think the election result of Taiwan is the main concern now for both China and the United States. And I wouldn't say it's a co-management. I mean, some people have put that word in the interchange. I think it's more like that the American is getting the message from China, and they try to prevent any misunderstanding or anything that can trigger an accident or even a potential conflict between Taiwan or China or Taiwan or China and the United States. I think that is the main thing three sides want to avoid.
So Bill, as the former AIT director, what's your view on this?
Well, I very much agree. I think both of the people who will be representing both the Republicans and the Democrats who are coming are retired. They're not in their current positions. So that's very important. They don't have official status officially, even though they were both very high ranking within the US government at one time. But I would also suspect that we're not going to see another similar call to the one that Tsai Ing-wen made to Donald Trump, a direct phone call. I would suspect that Lai Ching-te will be advised to hold back from that because it would just set off Beijing in the wrong direction. Nobody wants to send any inflammatory signals to begin with. So I think, you know, this is a way both to show our appreciation for the democratic election that will have taken place in Taiwan, show support for Taiwan from the United States, but without doing so in a way that implies we're moving the nature of our relationship in a different direction.
So after the election, do you foresee there will be a great shift from China in terms of their attitude towards Taiwan? Now, like, will they shift from merely opposing independence to actively seeking national unification?
Although I just said that they have a meeting and they exchange their view, but that doesn't mean that China will not do anything regarding if William Lai get elected. I think there's two things happening in China right now. One is that Xi Jinping had been causing so many resentment and dissatisfaction among Chinese people. The economy is not going well. I mean, all the things is not going well. So the issue of Taiwan is like a volcano that is going to erupt. I mean, people were using this nationalist issues as a legitimate cause to accusing Xi Jinping not doing a good job on Taiwan. And the second thing is maybe Xi Jinping will use the Taiwan issue as a pressure valve to release some of the pressure coming from China inside. I mean, this is the way that he's showing that he had a determination for national unification and so on and so forth. But the main thing is that he don't want to trigger a war right now. So right after his summit in San Francisco with Joe Biden, and that is the last thing he would want to do to trigger war. But he had to put up a show in a way for those reasons. So what they're going to do remains to be seen.
Bill?
I agree with that assessment. I was just watching something on YouTube today about how banking staff in China are having to return both their bonuses and in some cases their pay to the banks because the banks aren't able to collect on the debt. The loans they gave to all of these real estate developers, which now are bouncing. So these are, you know, fairly well-educated, middle-class people, but in Chinese terms, who don't have any money. So there's growing dissatisfaction from these kinds of situations, I think, in China. There's also the fact that we know that within the party, Communist Party, there has to be a lot of disaffection because so many people have been removed from their positions, particularly within the military, the Department of Defense. So there's got to be growing resentment within the party. So I don't think that, the president, Xi Jinping, wants to do anything, or the chairman wants to do anything that's going to lead to an open conflict. This would not be in his own interest. But that said, I think his line on Taiwan, his pressure of various kinds, I think are likely to continue. So I don't think anybody's going to be able to breathe easily in the coming months.
Right. So now let's turn our focus back to the U.S. presidential election. So it seems that in 2024, it might be a rematch between Biden and Trump again. So Bill already told us about your views regarding if Trump is elected, what might happen. What about if Biden is re-elected? Will there be great changes, or he will just continue his policy?
I think if Biden get re-elected, I think he would continue with the policy that he's been doing. I think that is a sure policy is beneficial for Taiwan. The tricky thing about Donald Trump getting elected is that he may be showing some goodwill or gesture to Taiwan, but in the end, Donald Trump is someone you cannot figure it out and very hard to predict. I mean, he's the one also would like to make a deal. And that is something that Taiwan should be very aware of.
Donald Trump's performance during this run-up to the nomination has been very poor. He's made a lot of outlandish claims. He's inundated with criminal charges, civil cases as well in the courts. I think he's rather desperate. And so I do agree, he's very unpredictable what he will do. I don't think he's a person with very strong commitments to values. And so I think he would sell out almost any country if he perceived it was in his own interest to do so. So I'm very worried about his election, both because I worry about America, but also because I worry a lot about Taiwan. So almost anyone else who gets elected, whether Republican or a Democrat, I think would be an improvement over Donald Trump. And personally, I would rather see two new candidates running.
Too bad. Maybe we don't have two new candidates this time.
Well, President Biden has been very good. He's made the strongest statements about the defense in my lifetime. He's been the most forward-leaning about we will come to Taiwan's defense. But nobody wants to put that to a test. At the same time, I'm not sure that anyone who would replace him on the Democratic side or the Republican side would come out with his strongest statement, which even clearly had shocked his own staffs every time he said that.
And then also because President Biden had been so old, he had been saying we will come to Taiwan rescue 4 times now.
Right. And been corrected by his staff.
I mean, some people are wondering whether he is a slip of his tongue or anything like that. I would prefer to have someone that is younger and be very firm on that issue rather than that kind of talk that you were wondering whether he's really mean it when he said that.
But also, Chenlung, you just said that in 2023, after the APEC meeting, well, the summit between President Xi Jinping and Biden, it seems that U.S.-China relations have slightly improved. So what impact will cross-strait relations have on the U.S. post-election? And what change in Taiwan might stabilize the U.S.-China ties?
I think after the U.S. Elections, and China would be, for the San Francisco summit, it's only a temporary compromise that would last for about a year. But in this year's November, after the election, China would really going to size up what kind of U.S. president they're going to deal with. And if they find it's a president that is hold on to its principle and is not going to waver and had its commitment to its allies, then they'll know that they have to deal with him in the long term and seriously. I think that would be the U.S. president we are hoping to see. Right?
Mm-hmm. Bill?
I agree with that assessment. I don't think, actually, I don't think the meeting that President Biden had after APEC with Xi Jinping was all that stunning. I mean, there was an agreement in principle for military-to-military talks, but I think there was maybe one phone call that I'm aware of. It wasn't very consequential. And some of the concerns beyond, the U.S. is concerned about the Chinese military and military activities, about their behavior in the South China Sea, which has not improved. If anything, it's gotten worse, particularly vis-a-vis their treatment of the Philippines and Philippines fishing vessels and their claims to the South China Sea. I think overall their relationship with other Asian countries is, particularly South Korea, Japan, Vietnam, and Philippines has not gotten better. So I think some of the fundamental concerns the U.S. has haven't been addressed. And at the same time, Chinese concerns, they want more U.S. investment, they want more intellectual property available to them. I don't think any of those things are going to be forthcoming either, because it doesn't serve U.S. economic interests at all. So I think there are such strong fundamental differences, it's hard to see how anytime soon they're going to be overcome.
I think that's all the time we have for today, but as Taiwan's election is just around the corner, so please keep an eye and we'll see the results very soon, and may the best candidate win. If you liked our show, please click on the YouTube and also leave us with your comments. Thank you, stay safe, and see you next time.